Okay, so today we're working on the Civic. We're going to be replacing the clutch. So essentially this is kind of like a informational video. I'm just going to show you how to upgrade / replace your clutch. It's pretty similar to most front-wheel drive cars. Let's get started. Alright, so the first step is you're going to want to jack up your car. And once you have it up, you're going to want to put it up on some jack stands. Now once you've got it secure and up on the jack stands, you're going to want to break the drain plug loose and grab a pan and drain your transmission fluid. Now once you've let the transmission drain out of all its fluid, you're going to want to go ahead and reinstall that drain plug back in and just snug it back up. Alright, so the next step is you're going to want to remove the ball joint nut and the tie rod end nut, so that way we can pull out those axles soon, and you're going to do this on both sides.
Somebody banging on my garage door?
Yeah.
Garage door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's stuff out of the way.
Ah, okay. Alright, so just had some random guy knock on the door, or on the garage door, right? And he was asking some questions about our preludes out front. Turns out he saw my videos on YouTube, so shout out to Mike for being a fan, I guess. Kind of weird though. I've got like, what, 17 subscribers and people are noticing me. I made it, Mom. I made it, Mom. Quit your job. Famous, Mom.
Alright, so what were you working on down here? I was taking.
Alright, well anyways, back to work. For the next step, you're going to want to break the axle nuts off on both sides. If you don't have any powerful tools, just go ahead and grab a long breaker bar and have someone step inside and just stomp on the brakes as hard as they can while someone else breaks them off. Attitude adjuster right there. You're going to want to grab some kind of separator if you don't have any fancy tools. We just got this fork, and we're going to go ahead and try and separate the ball joint in the bottom so we can pry out the axles soon. Alright, now to be able to remove the axle out completely, we're going to have to remove the strut. So right now we're going to be breaking loose the lower strut bolt.
You're gonna fucking kick me. Alright, there it goes.
Okay, so from now there you're going to want to take a 12 up top and take the 2 bolts off the strut so that we can remove the strut from the top end and pull that axle out. Okay, now with all of that out of the way, you should be able to pull out the axle with no problem. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is to start pulling stuff out of the engine bay. You're going to want to get the air box and, any kinds of hoses and wires and clips out of your way. Now that everything has been disconnected from around the transmission and nothing's in the way, you can go ahead and start taking out the bolts for the transmission mounts. Now always remember, considering that this is taking us at least a few days, it's always a good idea to bag up your bolts and all kinds of things and label them so you don't lose them and forget where they go. So looking around trying to find all the transmission bolts for this, we've noticed that the exhaust downpipe is going to be in the way of removing at least one of the bolts. So you're going to go ahead and want to drop that so that we can get that out of your way. It's also going to make it a little easier to pull that transmission out with it out. So there will always be some bolts that are just too stubborn, but just grabbing some bigger bars and wrenches helps you get some leverage and you should be able to break them loose. Alright, so next you're going to want to remove the engine and transmission center support and the inspection plate. And from there you can go ahead and start to remove the rear transmission mounting bolts. Now while you're under the car, you can go ahead and unbolt the shifting mechanisms. There's going to be one bolt right behind the transmission. And a bit further back, right underneath the actual shifter, it's going to be one 12mm bolt and nut you're going to need to remove to drop that. Once that's finished up, you can proceed to loosening up the transmission bolts up on top. You're just going to want to leave the top transmission bolt intact, because that's what's going to be supporting it to the engine after you drop the mount. Now go ahead and grab your jack, and you're going to want to put a thick piece of wood or a piece of metal to help support this left side of the engine. Once the engine is supported, you can go ahead and start to break loose the transmission mount on the passenger side so we can start to break free the transmission from the engine. So we're slowly lowering the engine and transmission together so we can clear it out of anything's way. Now as you can see, as circled here, we pried the transmission away from the engine so that way we can get ready to pull it off. Now I'm up on top removing the last transmission bolt, and Michael's supporting the transmission down below. This is a fairly light transmission, but if you have tools to help you do it, we recommend so. Make sure if you're doing this, just please be careful. Once you get the transmission out of the way, you can go ahead and start to break loose the pressure plate bolts. You're going to want to go in a crisscross pattern to spread the load evenly and go ahead and pull the pressure plate and clutch out.
Oh, son of a...
I just wanted to show the few things that we got for this specific car. You're going to head down to your local auto parts store. We're here to pick up a new flywheel because while we're here we might as well replace it. We got Honda MTF and we've got the new transmission axle seals, and you want to get yourself a pretty good clutch kit. Alright, so now we're removing the flywheel. This isn't actually necessary, so it's just the few bolts there. You're going to remove in a crisscross pattern. But we're replacing it because we're here anyways. Now you're going to want to clean your new flywheel with some brake cleaner, some degreaser, and a rag. Go ahead and install your new pilot bearing using a thick piece of metal here and hammering it lightly until it's nice and flush. Now to install the flywheel, there's usually some holes or dowels that you're going to want to line up, and once those are lined up, you're going to go ahead and put the bolts in and hold them in place and just kind of snug them up for now. And then once they're snug, you're going to grab a torque wrench and we're going to torque them down to 69 foot-pounds. Once that flywheel is torqued down, you're going to want to go ahead and use your clutch alignment tool to put your clutch and pressure plate on. Make sure you get the spline nice and tight and straight in there. And once that's on there, you're going to want to go ahead and put the bolts on for the pressure plate and just snug them up for now. And once you've assured that your clutch is nice and straight, go ahead and tighten them down to 19 foot-pounds. Now with the transmission out, it'd be a good time to go ahead and pull those two axle seals. So you can pull the passenger and the driver's side one.
Always need a good clean contact surface for bearings, seals, and gaskets. You only gotta push it in to the end of this.
Now the next thing you're going to want to replace is the throw-out bearing. You're just going to want to pull the fork and slide the old bearing off. Just slide the new one right on there and put the fork right back in. Now if you have the correct tools to do this job, please use them. We do not, so we're just trying our best here. So now we're getting the transmission in and trying to make sure we get the input shaft correctly on there in the spline. Now I'm up on top putting the top bolt in as soon as the transmission lines up, so that way he no longer has to hold it. Once the transmission is secured in place, you're going to want to go ahead and reattach the shifter assembly that bolts all the way in the back where the shifter is and behind the transmission. Now you can go ahead and start tightening down all the transmission bolts and reattaching the transmission mount bolt. And while you're up there, go ahead and start attaching clips and hoses and connectors that you've removed. You can go ahead and insert things like the starter. Here we're just putting on the inspection plate, and now we're bolting on this lower center transmission support. So now you can go ahead and reinstall the exhaust. It's going to be 2 mounting bolts in this bracket here, and then 3 bolts for the pipe itself. While it's nice and empty here, we're just cleaning up some things like this thermostat housing. Okay, so now the installation of the axles can begin. So you're going to want to go ahead and plop that sucker into the transmission. And right here you see us, we're trying to struggle with getting into the hub right here. Once you've got that on, you go ahead and reattach the track rod arm and the lower ball joint. Go ahead and bolt up the strut too. Now you're going to want to repeat on the other side, but here you see us pushing the axle. Show you exactly where it is that we're tightening everything up. Alright, now's a good time to go ahead and break loose your fill plug for your transmission. Once that's done, you're going to want to jack up the rear end of your car if you haven't already, because you're going to want the car nice and level so you get a good fill in the transmission. Alright, so we're going to fill the transmission that we removed the fill plug. You'll find this at Walmart in the marine section, used to fill up your fluids. So this will screw right onto the transmission fluid. Top this in there, throw it in there, and just keep pumping until it's full. You'll know it's full once it starts to drain out.
This nozzle, putting it where the fill plug is. Just gonna stick it in there and begin to pump. Just keep doing this till you get full.
Now we're just bleeding the clutch now since we did remove the slave cylinder. This is usually a 2-person job, so you're going to have somebody inside pressing the clutch for you while somebody opens up the bleeder valve. Now one of the last things and very important things is to tighten up the axle nuts. You're going to want to make sure you get someone inside, press the brakes again, and tighten them down nice and tight. Now all you're going to want to do is just throw the wheels back on there and lower it down, and you should be done. Alright, so I hope that this helped you out. I tried to get as much footage as I could. We tried to use, the tools, the best tools that we had. If we had a transmission jack, we totally would have used that. But, we gotta make do with what we got, so definitely don't recommend doing that. But if transmission's light enough and you're strong enough, go for it. Anyways, if you have any questions about some certain things, I'd be happy to try and reply, so just leave a comment.